What's up guys, Will Gibbons here, and today I'm going to be taking you through 5 books that have helped me improve my rendering skills over the past few years. So today I wanted to try something a little bit different. I've had a lot of people ask me what books I recommend to learn more about rendering. A couple videos back I referenced a book and I've had DMs and comments asking what book I was talking about. So I have 5 books here today that have helped me learn about rendering and visualization that I think you guys would find helpful. And I thought it'd be cool to do a little bit of a book review and see if you guys find it helpful. Also, if you want to look this information up later, not in video form, I put together a blog post over at my website, and I'll link that up below, and that will take you to the review and summary of each of these books individually, as well as links if you want to share it with somebody else. So the first book I want to talk about is called Light for Visual Artists by Richard Yacht. It's about 175 pages or so. It's a very easy read. This is generally the first book I recommend to anybody who has not done any reading on light or anything like that. And this book, as you would guess, really just does talk about light specifically, but it's written for artists, which means there are, of course, lots of visual aids and references. And everything that he talks about in here is explained with simple to read diagrams. And again, it's for artists. So he talks about how light is used in films and in narrative, talking about why shadows are certain colors, how to work with colored light, things like atmosphere and volumetric effects, and simple lighting setups, studio lighting, all sorts of good stuff like that. So this is a fantastic introductory book that I think will take your rendering from, wherever it's at and kick it up a notch considerably. It's also quite affordable. It's a quick, easy read, and it was just updated this year. This is the 2nd edition of this book. I highly recommend you get it. It'll be linked up down below. Now, for those with a little more experience looking to take their rendering game up another notch, we have Digital Lighting and Rendering. This book is quite a bit more in depth than the one I just mentioned. This is not just about lighting. This is really about all things rendering, lighting and rendering. Now, I will say that this book is a little bit older. I think it's about 5 years old. And this is also in its, I think 4th edition, if I'm not mistaken. This is quite a bit further along. And this book really gets into lots of the entire rendering pipeline, everything from lighting to material properties to camera properties, all sorts of stuff. This book is also quite a bit meatier than the last one. It's about 400 pages or so. So it's definitely a little bit got more content in it, and it's a more well-rounded book. So if you are, again, fairly new to rendering, or you're trying to get a good understanding of kind of all the aspects of rendering and visual storytelling and stuff like that, this is a fantastic book that will give you, in my opinion, probably the most value out of all these. It's got probably the most information without getting too technical. It is a little bit more geared toward traditional renderers, like what you'll find in Blender probably, or 3ds Max, that type of thing. This is the 3rd edition by Jeremy Byrne, highly recommended. Again, I'll link that up below. As a follow-up or a companion book, this one is not specifically on rendering, but number 3 is digital modeling. So these two look similar because they really do go together. So they're not exactly by the same author, but again, they're meant as like a companion piece, to each other. Looks like this one had a disc involved, but and this one's older too. This is I think just the 1st edition of this book. It's definitely got a lot more content for traditional modeling. So we're talking polygonal modeling and modeling for the VFX and entertainment industry. But really, it goes over a lot of examples and technologies and tools that are used within the visualization pipeline. But anyway, yeah, even though this is not specifically about rendering, if you read this book, it will help you create better visuals, because you have to start with good 3D data if you're going to create good renderings, and that's really what this book is all about. All right, I hope you're liking this so far. Again, this is a totally new format for me. I always do software tutorials, but in this case, this is a bit more of a discussion around a related topic. So if you guys find this type of thing interesting, let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to do more discussions on anything that's related to visuals, rendering, I don't know, whatever your requests are, I'm open to it. Just trying new things, so we'll see. But yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and make sure you subscribe and leave me a thumbs up if you're into that sort of thing. All right, our fourth book is called Light, Science, and Magic. And again, it's another book all about lighting, as the name would suggest. So this is a pretty meaty book as well. This one gets into the 350-page realm, and this is in its, I think it's 5th edition. So I think this has been a pretty popular book over the years. Now I will say I didn't think this book was quite as well written as some of those other ones, but that's not to say that the information in it is not useful. This is primarily a book written by and for photographers. So a lot of what they talk about in this is going to be how to use light as a photographer to create better images. They also get a lot into equipment, physical lights, lenses, photographing common subjects and certain materials. But what I learned a lot about in this book was things like, in the real world, you're faced with challenges when photographing things like glass or metal, and you know, how do you set up your camera in relation to an object to make sure that reflections are where you want them, or maybe moving things so the reflections are not in the way. When using a render engine like KeyShot, which is what I do most often, it's kind of this physically based, accurate lighting tool. And what I learned is that if you treat KeyShot like a camera and you treat things like you would in the real world, you're going to get better results. And so this book, coming from like a photography point of view, the principles covered in this book really do make it easier to get to your final rendering in KeyShot and take what you see in your head and get it out into your rendered image. So this is a great book, definitely recommended. More on the technical side of things, and again, it's pretty deep dive on lighting. So if you're more interested in things like the full pipeline of rendering and materials, again, you're going to be more looking at a book like this. But if you really want to take your lighting up a notch and you're a little more experienced, then this is a great way to go. And finally, this last book is a monster. We have Real-Time Rendering. This is the 4th edition of this book. So this one also was recently revised. I think this one came out in 2018, late 2018, and it's a beast. If we look at the size, it's over 1,000 pages. If you include the index and bibliography, it's like 1,200 pages or something. It's a big, big book. And it is basically written on super thin Bible paper with teeny tiny words and lots of them. Now there are visual diagrams, which is good, but again, this is more like a textbook. Again, I think this is quite often, this is required reading for anyone in computer science programs who are going to be writing render engines and creating code for computer graphics. So a lot of a lot of the information in this book goes beyond my comprehension. There's a lot of physics and math, you know, things like that, that I just don't understand. That said, this has so much information that when I'm having trouble finding out how something works on Google, I go to this book. And this book has documented pretty much everything related to rendering, and the fact that it's quite new, it was updated this past year, it's pretty much up to date with all the technology, which you know, changes so quickly. So this is a fantastic book. It's a great resource. It goes so in depth into absolutely everything. This is not a book you read beginning to end unless you're a lot smarter than. The way I use this book is I just look up individual topics and I that I want to brush up on, and it's a great resource for that. It's also a nice way to basically take a break from work and just crack it open and read a few pages, and you'll learn something new, really. So this is a fantastic book, but it's also pretty expensive and it's not an easy read. So value-wise, I don't know if I give it quite as high a mark as some of those other books I showed you. But if you're looking to expand your library and really gain a valuable piece of information or a resource that you can look things up in, I highly recommend this book for that purpose. So those are the 5 books. To summarize, we've got, so for beginners, I'm going to recommend either of these 2 books. Definitely this one specifically for lighting, This one probably is a good introductory book for if you're just getting into rendering or visualization as a whole. This one's probably the most comprehensive, but this one is probably the easiest book to read out of all of these. If you're looking to brush up on your modeling skills or understand how you can create better renderings by starting off with better CAD models or polygonal models, really, this is a great read. If you want to really start to master lighting in your renderings and take your skills up a notch higher, but you've already got pretty good experience on the fundamentals, I'm going to recommend this one, Lighting, Science, and Magic. And last but not least, if you're not intimidated by math, physics, or you just want a cool book on your shelf, or if you want to grab something that allows you to read very deeply into detail on any sort of subjects related to rendering, it's going to be this one, Real-Time Rendering. So those are my top 5 books that I recommend for getting better at rendering. The other biggest benefit I got from reading these books are I'm not guessing when it comes to tweaking technical settings within my rendering software. When I'm adjusting my lighting or my material properties, it's not a bunch of guesswork. And when you understand how these things actually work in the real world, it allows you to get to your final image much faster instead of just tweaking a bunch of settings and then getting frustrated because you don't know exactly what these things are. These books will kind of decode and demystify a lot of what you encounter in your rendering software, no matter what software it is, whether it's 3ds Max, Redshift, Octane, Cycles, Physical, KeyShot, Corona, Vray, whatever, you get the point. But again, these books, highly recommended. Check down below for links to check the latest pricing on Amazon. And finally, I have the blog post on my website. I'll link that up down below, and that's a nice succinct version of this book review that you can save for later or send to somebody else. So guys, let me know in the comments what you thought about this formatted video, whether you like it or don't like it. Thanks for your patience. I will be back with the KeyShot tutorials soon. I just have to clear a few things up and plan the next few videos. And until next time, happy rendering.